Good morning, everyone. Hope you guys are doing well. Unfortunately, I am still out, so I hope you guys are treating myself well. In the meantime, we'll be exploring function notation expressions today. So, if everyone can take out their notes packet and turn all the way to day number 3, on the top left, it will say function notation. So, I'm pretty sure that we've already covered solving expressions, combining like terms, and solving inequalities on both sides. This is just adding upon it as we're learning more and more things about functions and how to solve them. So, what is function notation? Function notation often looks like f of x. And this f is essentially the engine or the function, and our x will be our input into the engine or function, and we will get whatever comes out of it. I know that's a little confusing, so let's go through the first example together. In our first example, we have if y equals 3x minus 5, find y when x equals 2. So let's write down our equation below. Y equals 3x minus 5. We plug in x, which is 2, as our x value right here. So then in our next step, we have y equals 3 times 2 minus 5. From there, we can see 3 times 2 becomes 6. 6 minus 5 becomes 1. So y will equal 1 when x equals 2. And from there, we could put it into our ordered pair right here. Now on the other hand, if you look to the other side, we have if f of x equals 3x minus 5, find f of 2. Now this is very similar to the previous equation, except instead of y, we have f of x. And whenever we have a number inside where x would be, right here, that is our x value. So we solve it just like the last equation. F of 2 equals 3x minus 5. And because 2 is where our x value is, we plug it in right here. So we get 3 times 2 minus 5, 6 minus 5, and it becomes 1. So f of 2 equals 1. So our answer is the exact same, 2 of 1. Now, for question number 1, compare and contrast the two ways to solve an equation as shown above. We can see that we get the same solution. However, we used the same steps. But the notations are different. Are different. So, explain how to solve the following problem. If f of x equals x plus 3, find f of 15. Now keep in mind that when it says f of 15, this means x equals 15, because inside of these parentheses would be our x value. And if x equals 15, then we could plug it in back into this equation. So let's rewrite this out. F of 15 equals 15 plus 3. F of 15 equals 18, because we combine the like terms. So we know that f of 15 equals 18. So in our ordered pair, when x equals 15, our f of 15, or our y value, is 18. Hopefully everyone got that. Now I'm going to move on to the bottom set. Now, just like the questions above, it will show us two different equations. However, this time it shows us the y value first. So let's go over it together. If y equals x minus 3, find x if y equals 7. So y equals x minus 3, and because we know our y value, 7, we plug it in right here. So we get 7 equals x minus 3. Now, in order to find out what x is, we need to get rid of this minus 3 on this side. And in order to get rid of it, remember, we add its opposite or inverse. So the opposite of negative 3 would be positive 3. So when we add 3 on both sides, we could cancel these out because they're the opposite, and then add 3 to 7. So here we'll get 10 equals x, or x equals 10. And from here, because we know our x value and we know our y value, we could put it into ordered pair and have our answer. Now this time we get a funny looking letter. We get g of x. So it says if g of x equals x minus 3, find x if g of x equals 7. So just imagine g, although g is not the same thing as f, g is just an engine or representation of what the function could be. And oftentimes you would have different letters, but I believe we will only be going through f of x and g of x. I don't think there's going to be h or I or k. All right, so just like in the previous example, if you notice, we did the exact same steps. We plugged in 7, our y value, as g of x. So we get 7 equals x minus 3. We add the inverse of 3 on both sides to balance it out. Then we get 10 equals x. And look at that. We got the exact same answer. So, for number 3, compare and contrast the two ways to solve an equation above. Well, this time, we were given the y value first, but we did the same strategy. We plugged it in. So, compare. Plug in value. Balanced equation. Same strategy. The difference would be we have g of x, which equals to y, because previously we had f of x. Now for number 4, it says, explain how to solve the following problem. If f of x equals x plus 3, find x if f of x equals 15. Now so this time instead of getting an x value, we have our y value, or f of x. If you notice, f of x equals x plus 3, f of x equals 15. So we could plug in 15 as our f of x value. So we could rewrite the equation, 15 equals x plus 3. And if we want to solve it out, we balance it out by subtracting 3 on both sides. Let me just rewrite here. Here's my work. Ran out of room on the other side. So we were able to find that x equals 12, and in our ordered pair, 12, 15. So for number 5, label the following with x and y showing where the x value and y value would go. Now I'll just write here, when we have this notation, it's f of x, not f of y. F of x equals y. And on the other side, it is y equals g of x. Hopefully everyone's good. And then now we're going to go to the next page. Everyone turn to the next page. And you should be having 6 at the top. Question number 6, excuse me. So it says, write the variable y in function notation. So if you remember last time, in the previous question, y is the same thing as f of x. So y equals f of x. We could also write y equals g of x. Just 2 different equations it could equal. So number 7, which is another correct representation of the coordinate x of y? Coordinate xy. And for here, it would be answer number C. Now, some of you might think it might be A because there's an F right here, but that doesn't mean anything because without the x input into the function, you cannot get the y value. So if you look at number C, our x is in our x value, and our f of x is our y value. Now, soon, I'm going to let you guys do some practice. So I'm going to work out number 1 and number 5, and then let you guys work independently or with a partner for a couple minutes. The sub can pause, but for now, I'm going to work out number 1 and number 5. So for number 1, it says f of -1. Now what this means is that when x equals -1, what is y? So if we look at the table, when x equals -1, our y value is 14. And let's check on number 5. So this says when f of x equals -1 or y equals -1, what is our x value? So if we look at this table, when f of x equals -1, our x value is 2. So then we could write 2 right here. Alright, so if the sub can, please pause the video and let them work it out for a couple of minutes until they're finished, and then I'll go through how I solve the rest of them. Alright, so now I will go through the rest of them. So for number 2, it says f of 2. So f of 2, so when x equals 2, y equals -1. And next is f of 0. So when x equals 0, f of x equals 5. Next it says f of 5. So when x equals 4, y equals 9. This time, on number 6, we have f of x equals 0. So if we look at f of x, go down. When equals 0, x is 1. Same here. When f of x equals 2, x equals 3. And finally, when f of x equals 5, x equals 0. Hopefully everyone caught that. You can pause if you need to copy down the answers, but I'll be moving on to the next page. Now, here's where it gets a little tricky. So for here, we have a graph this time. It may look intimidating, but remember, we solved all of our answers. When we solved all of our answers, we put them into ordered pairs. So for example, this point down here, this is -10, -9. Or this point right here, right on the x-axis, -7, 0. We could label some more. This one at the very tippy top, 0, 10. Right here, 6, 6. And how about this one? How about this one right here? What is this? 9, 0. So those are just some of the points on the graph that can help us find the answers. So if we scroll down to the bottom, it's more practice. So I'll go through the first two on the top, and I want you guys to work together as a partner or as a group and help each other out finding the answer. So the first one is f of -10. So if we look at the graph, when x equals -10, what is y? So if we look here, when x equals -10, our y value is -9. Now on the other side, we have f of x equals -9. So we can imagine this is our y. So when y equals -y, excuse me, when y equals -9, what is our x value? So if we look here, when on our y-axis, when it is -9, our x value is -10. So if you can, please pause the video, give them 10 to 15 minutes to figure out the rest, write it down, and then I'll go over the answers. All right. So, fortunately my video is not that big, so I'm gonna have to do some switching. So f of -7, when x equals -7, our y value is 0. And you can see right here, when x equals -7, our y value is 0. When x equals -1, our y value is 9. When f equals 0, y value is 10. And I'll just go through the rest of the answers. So when x equals 1, y is 9. When x equals 6, y equals 6. And when x equals 7, y equals 0. So keep in mind, on this row, we already have the x value given to us. And we're trying to find the f of x or y value. On the other side, we are already given our f of x or y value, and we're trying to find our x value. So when x equals -3, go to when x equals -3, excuse me, when our y is -3, our x value is -8. Now this one's a little tricky, but it's actually not that hard once you realize the trick. So when our y value is 0, we can find our x value. And they gave us 3 blanks, so there must be 3 points when y equals 0. So when y equals 0, right here, right there, and right there, we can find our x value. So we have -7. Here I did not label it, but that's 7, 0. And here we have 9, 0. So when y equals 0, x equals -7, 7, and 9. Now I'll just go over to the answers as flipping through does disorient the camera. So when f of x equals 6, x equals -3 and 6. When f of x equals 8, x equals -2 and 2. When f of x equals 9, x equals -1 and 1. When f of x equals 10, x equals 0. So that's it for the notes, at least. But I know this sucks. I know it's hard. But yes, we do have a thing called homework. So let me just pull that page out. Function notation homework. And as this is very important, but I don't want to overwhelm yourselves. For the questions, I want you guys to try number 1. That's very important. Number 2. And number 3 for sure, because I want you guys to use the graph, be able to understand and determine certain aspects of it, such as the x values and the domain and range. That's very important for you guys. And number 4 shouldn't take too long, as you're just looking at a table. So just questions 1 through 4 for the homework. All right. Well, I hope you guys have a good day, and I hope to see you guys soon.